Oh, hello everybody and welcome to another Kalicube Tuesdays. Today it's with Joe Koufman. And I apologize, Joe, I said your name wrong last week. I said Kaufman, and you'll see why I made that mistake, because I think everybody must make that mistake, right?
Kaufman. Like when
I
was
Kaufman,
a kid.
not even Koufman.
Yeah, when I was a kid, it was man.
Right, funny kids. I was Barnard, so I'm definitely not going to complain about that. A quick hello and we're good to go. Welcome to the show, Joe Koufman. I corrected myself in the middle of that.
I appreciate that welcome. Excited to be here, Jason.
Lovely. It's delightful to have you here. And we're going to be talking about brands choosing the right agency for the right reasons, as I understand it. But before that, quickly, the beginning of the show is always about knowledge panels, brand SERPs, and the knowledge graph, which I work on with Wordlift. And Jeff J. Hunter pointed out to me that Google Podcasts now shows entities at the bottom of each podcast episode with links through to Google. So if you are an entity in the knowledge graph and you are on a podcast or featured on a podcast, or you have a podcast, or your topic, I would assume, is featured in the podcast who's going to be coming soon, then Google provides these links through, which is another great reason to be in the knowledge graph. Jeff J. Hunter down there, absolutely wonderful interview I did with him about brand SERPs a couple of days ago. But now on to you, Joe. You were quite shocking when I looked you up. Well, I mean, number one is that you have a completely unique name. I couldn't find anybody else with the same name. Am I wrong?
You're pretty accurate. And in fact, it got me a second date with my wife. So it worked out pretty well for me.
And presumably a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth.
It did. But on the first date, I dangled a teaser to tell her that there's a suspicion by one of my cousins that the reason my name is spelled the way it is scandalous. And I said, I'll tell you about it on our second date. And she said, okay. And so I knew I got a second date at that point.
Right. You're a good marketer.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, I actually, I was in Mauritius for years and years and years. And I had a guy who worked for me, and his surname was a bit unusual in Mauritius. And he said, well, actually, I'm the only person in my family with that surname. And I said, that can't be true. And he said, well, actually, when they registered my name, the person who registered it wrote it wrong. And when my father asked them to correct it, they said, it's too late. It's written now. That's going to be it for the rest of his life. So I'm kind of thinking maybe it was the same for you.
That's probably the reality. There was just some guy at Ellis Island when my great grandfather came over in the early 1900s and just wrote it wrong because he didn't really speak English. He spoke only Russian. But the scandalous version is more interesting. And
are you going to share that, or is that something that only your wife knows?
I'll share it on our second podcast, our next podcast, or next conversation.
Genius. But what that does mean, now to move away from that, I mean, I looked you up on Facebook, I looked you on LinkedIn, I couldn't find anybody else. And then you look up your brand SERP, and of course, the only person on your brand SERP is you, because there's nobody else with your name. That's the Facebook lookup I did to check out for you. And the next one that we're going to put up is your brand SERP. And it's all blue links, but it's all you. And I was talking about Jeff J. Hunter earlier on. He has an incredibly common name. And his problem is that loads of people, actors and so on, have come up for that. You don't have that problem. Only you will ever come up. But if we can have that brand SERP again, and I may criticize very slightly, you might want to think about having videos or Twitter boxes or something to make it a bit more interesting and, may I say, sexy.
Yeah,
wishing to go for the second date straight away.
Absolutely, we're working on that. We've been developing some videos. We've done a series called the Cmo Spotlight, where I'm interviewing CMOs on what makes them special and unique. And so hopefully we'll, in another couple of months, we'll come back and there'll be some video on that results page as well.
Brilliant stuff. Okay. Well, I mean, I think what makes us unique, or what we think makes us unique, is always what our mother told us makes us unique. And that isn't necessarily honest. But on to the topic of the day, which is how to find the right agency for your brand. Now, this is something I know absolutely nothing about. I mean, there have been a few of these interviews where I don't know anything, but this is because I've never been part of an agency. I'm a freelancer. So agencies are just kind of this world, this other world away from us. And if we put up the 3 questions that you sent me, you're going to answer, why do brands look for agencies? Was number 2 question. Sorry, number 1. Question number 2, you're going to tell me because we haven't got it on screen. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
What kinds of agencies they seek and how they find and select the right agency. Those theoretically the 3 questions. So we start with why brands seek marketing agency support. I mean, I wouldn't.
Yeah, well, let's first define what we mean by brand a little bit. So certainly brand can be within a large company that has a portfolio of brands. So think of a company like Kellogg's or Ford Motor Company or one of the, I'm obviously thinking of US based brands here, but they have a portfolio of different brands within the company. Right. And it may be that each of those different brands, actually here in Atlanta, we have Coca-Cola, and we all know there's Coca-Cola, the traditional Coca-Cola classic, but there's also Fanta, and there's root beer flavors, and there's waters and teas and juices. And so each of those.
Just what strikes me, but we can come back to that in just one moment. What strikes me about all those companies, they all started with one brand.
Right. Well, I think especially for a consumer packaged goods brand, the strategy is how do I get more shelf space on the grocery store aisle? And so they start with one that sells well, and then they say, okay, if I can launch 5 other brands that are complementary or different in some way, then I can get 5 SKUs on the shelf instead of 1. But consider a company like Coca-Cola here in Atlanta, based here in Atlanta, Georgia. They have so many different brands with different audiences that are interested in drinking those brands. So somebody that's more health conscious, for example, may prefer the waters or the teas. Somebody that's less health conscious or maybe wants caffeine boost, we can, have more of a soda.
Mountain Dew, isn't that the world's worst ever drink? It's kind of fluorescent green and very sugary, but it's not Coca-Cola.
It's not a Coca-Cola brand, but there are plenty of good and bad for all of these companies. I mean, they've definitely started to move towards, offering healthier choices because they realize that not everybody wants all the sugar and caffeine. Right. But if you think about the different target audience for the different brands, sometimes require very different marketing talents and skills to reach those different audiences. Okay. And so, each brand has a different need in terms of types of agency support that they might want. And so, the first question is, why does a brand go find an agency or want to go find an agency? And the answer is typically that they're missing either capacity or capability within their team. So,
but sorry, in the case of a company that has multiple brands and multiple audiences, they're perhaps missing also the capacity to adapt themselves to all these different markets.
Absolutely. Very good point. So for example, some brands cater themselves and lend themselves better to a specific target audience. So I'll give you an example we'll continue to use Coca-Cola. The Fanta brand within Coca-Cola tends to resonate very well with a largely Hispanic audience. Doesn't mean that other audiences don't love Fanta also, but it's just more popular in the Hispanic community than it is in other communities. So you may, for example, want to hire an agency that's an expert in multicultural marketing, or particularly marketing in Spanish language, for example, whereas that may not be a need for Dasani water, as an example. So to your point, it is still a capacity or capability issue that a brand would seek an agency. The capacity issue is, I just don't have enough arms and legs within my team to do all of the marketing work that I need to have done. And the capability side of it would be, I'm just not good at something within my team, and I would seek the expertise of somebody outside.
Can I add a fourth one?
Yeah, sure.
Which might be taking an agency because they can take a step back.
Take a step back to what?
Well, I mean, when we market our own products, we tend to have our heads so much in what we're trying to say and what we think and how we feel about it. Having an agency come in, or a freelancer in my case, selling my services there. It's actually just somebody who has a bit of, I can't remember what the word is in English. It's in recul in French. What is it in English?
Outside perspective.
Thank you very much. You're very good at words.
Thanks. I try to be. But to your point, even all of those other things you're seeking external expertise, and the expertise may be vision from outside of your brand and your world. It may be expertise in Spanish language, consumers. It may be expertise in search engine optimization or paid digital media or content creation or something else.
Basically anything you don't know how to do. And that must be a problem for brands, is admitting, because the person who's dealing with it within the brand, are they really going to want to say to their boss, I actually don't know how to do this?
Yeah. I think realistically in today's world, we realize that we can't be good at everything, and that many of the marketers within these organizations are generalists. And so they're a little bit good at a lot of things, but they're not truly an expert at any one given thing. And in many cases, the larger the brand, the larger the company. A massive company like Coca-Cola, they're managing lots and lots and lots of agencies, in some cases, thousands of agencies, not just hundreds, but thousands globally. And so part of the job as the marketer within a larger company may be just managing that agency and that agency relationship. And so they're quite literally admitting that they're not experts in the area, but their job is just to manage the resources.
Yeah, and that idea about being a generalist is actually a good thing. I know enough about all of these things to be able to see when they're doing it wrong or when they're getting it wrong, horribly wrong. But I can't possibly know enough about it all to do their job. And being a generalist is incredibly underestimated. I saw a talk, I can't remember who it was, might have been Greg Gifford at Brighton SEO years ago, about, the underappreciated glory of being a generalist who can actually spot all of these different things and say, well, okay, it doesn't look right, but we need a specialist. Let's get the specialist story in.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any shame in seeking help. I don't mean for addiction or something like that. I mean, from a marketing perspective, it's okay to say I'm not good at everything, but I'm willing to find an expert to help me solve some specific challenges that we're facing. A good example that I always comes to mind for me is email marketing. To know all of the platforms and know them well, and know all of the intricacies that go into doing email marketing or marketing automation well. There are people that spend their whole careers focused on marketing automation, and I would expect them to know more than I do as a generalist.
Brilliant. Okay. Another thing, as a generalist, you have the capacity to look it up online. There's this thing called Google that actually returns lots of helpful results. And you can look through it and you say, that looks like a likely solution. But I can suggest 2 or 3 options to the expert and say, here are 3 possibilities. That might make your life easier. And I can go with any of them. I was doing that literally today with a client, where the technician was saying, I didn't know about that, thank you very much. And all I did was look it up on Google because he didn't have the solution to hand. Yeah,
well, but one other perspective on that, Jason, is just because you took a lesson on YouTube yesterday doesn't make you an expert in that field. No. As a guy who started taking trumpet lessons as an adult, I can tell you that despite watching multiple videos, I'm still no expert at playing the trumpet.
That's a great example. I hope that wasn't what it came across as me saying. I was saying, I can see that this is a potential solution. I'm not going to do the video lessons. I'm not going to try and learn to play the trumpet, but maybe this is a good way to move forward with.
I could hire a trumpeter or I could hire a teacher to teach me how to play. Right.
Brilliant. Yeah, wonderful. Although, so second question, I can't remember what it was, so you're going to tell me.
Let's see if I can remember what it was. I think it was
what kind of agencies they seek. So specialist agencies, generalist agencies. This is brilliant. You know your topic incredibly well. You just don't know the 3 questions you sent.
No, I don't remember what I sent you. And we probably should look up the third too at some point so that I don't forget that.
Sorry, this is something that always comes up around the 15-minute mark, is that we're now ranking on YouTube for your name #1, and that will continue throughout the show.
Cool.
With your name, I suspect we might well manage to rank for longer.
Yeah, well, I actually changed my name, the spelling specifically for the SERP page. So that was those. No, I'm just kidding. No. But in terms of
actually, if we come back to Jeff J. Hunter, sorry, this is a little aside.
Yeah,
is that I said you're a genius for putting the J in the middle, because Jeffrey Hunter is actually an actor. He's a character in a film. I mean, there are hundreds of Jeffrey Hunters who've done lots of things. You're a genius putting the J in the middle. He said, I actually put the J in the middle 2 years ago because my grandfather died and I respected him so much. I wanted to respect that middle name that he shared with me. And it was complete luck. But if you have a common name, there's a tip. Put your middle initial.
You forgot actually the silent Z in my last name. So that's okay.
Now you've got me panicking. Look, no.
It's Z Koufman ZZZ. That's how I spell mine, just to be different.
Genius. Right. Okay.
No, but
so my copy pasting skills are really not up to the mark. So yeah. Anyway, what kind of brand agencies do they seek?
So specialist versus generalist, it's sort of a similar conversation to what we just had about skills, about marketing skills in general. But if you think about, agencies are either good at a lot of different things, but not necessarily fantastic at one specific thing, or they're a little bit more niche and focused on a specific discipline. And they could be even focused on a specific industry. So there are agencies that do nothing but healthcare work or nothing but restaurants or whatever. But generally what we see is specialist agencies that are focused on content creation, focused on email marketing, focused on public relations, focused on web design and development or SEO or something like that, versus a general agency that may have specialists on the team that are good at some of those different disciplines, but they are broader in their scope of the types of services that they're typically willing to offer clients.
Right. Well, I mean, with a generalist agency, my immediate reaction would be, I'm not solving my problem. I haven't got an agency who are any more specialized than I am. If I'm coming from that point of view that I don't have the skill set.
Well, except that let's consider a generalist agency that has, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 employees, 100, the reality is, especially for a smaller brand, I may not be able to afford to have a social media specialist, an email marketing specialist, a paid search specialist on staff, but I can hire an agency and get a little percentage of each of those different people's time. And therefore I get the benefits of a broad set of experiences and a broad set of skills without having to hire one person that's an expert at every single area.
And in that circumstance, it's saying I need to get this work onto somebody else because I simply don't have the capacity. So the fact that they're not necessarily a lot better than me isn't such a big deal. And the other thing, I mean, in an agency with loads of employees, presumably each person does one specific thing.
Well, and it goes back again to capacity and capability a little bit, because again, do I have the capacity to do all of the things I need for us to do, or does my team have the capacity to do all those things? And do I have the capability that the specific capability? And so we have over the years worked with both generalist agencies and specialist agencies, and we found that they both have a very important place within the ecosystem of support that a brand might need.
Right. And you yourself run an agency, or you ask agencies?
So set up as a marketing matchmaker in that we connect brands and agencies together. So our model is we put each agency that we work with through a very rigorous vetting process to narrow in on what it is that makes them special and unique and best of breed in something, best of class.
So
and then
carry on. Sorry, go ahead. Carry ahead.
And then we go out and have conversations with brands, with marketers who may need agency support, and we connect the two together and then get out of the way. I mean, much like a dating service connects, two people that might want to romantically date, we're connecting brands that sometimes have a hard time finding the right agency to support them, and agencies that frankly are more focused on doing business, or more focused on doing great work for their clients than really being good at business development or marketing themselves as an agency. And so we're matchmakers connecting brands and agencies together. We're paid typically by the agencies on an ongoing basis to make ongoing introductions.
Isn't there a tendency for the agency to say, just get me as many clients as you can? So that would be kind of biased, in which case you're just becoming an extension of the agency's bullying, selling.
Yeah. Our approach, it's a really good question. Our approach is very different than just working for the agency. So when the client comes to us with a need, our process is to talk through the problem they're trying to solve and help them write a brief. We would help them write a marketing brief outlining the issues that they're facing. We then go look through our portfolio of all of our agency partners to determine if there are some that could really solve that problem. Which ones are the perfect fit to solve that problem? We then typically introduce the client or the brand to 3 or 4 different agencies. And the reason we do that is that when a client selects an agency partner, they usually do so because of capability. Can they solve my problem? And chemistry. Do I like them?
I was going to say that there is that whole thing of do I get on with the person? I find I mean, with my clients as a freelancer, if I don't like the person, it doesn't, or the people I'm dealing with, it doesn't last more than a month.
Absolutely. And so the reality is we can't force fit chemistry. We can't make chemistry happen. I mean, certainly if you think about the dating analogy, you press your shirt and you brush your teeth and comb your hair and you do all of these things to, give yourself the best chance that there'll at least be chemistry, but you cannot manufacture chemistry. And so by introducing the client to 3 or 4 different agencies, we're saying all 4 are capable, but you choose the one that seems to fit best with your team and you and your team. And so that's been our model has been praised a lot by clients because we expose them to some agencies that they may not have considered otherwise and give them the choice to control that relationship and control that that process of selecting the right one for them.
But if somebody doesn't call you or doesn't have the means to call you, or they're not in America because you don't work outside America, I assume, how do you define and then find the right agency? I mean, there must be a step process saying I have a problem of capacity, or I have a problem of skill, or I have a problem of whatever it might be, and I need to go and find these agencies and then sort through them. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think what you're asking is how do we find the brands or the clients that are looking for agency support?
No, that's not what I'm asking. Sorry, I'm saying if I'm a brand and I don't call you, I'm in France, so I need to find an agency because I'm in France. You can't speak French, so you're not going to help me. You can't help me. How do I go about defining what my needs are, what type of agency I need, and then finding those agencies and then sorting through them to make sure that I've got the right one?
Well, the short answer is you needed a European setup to help you, a European version of setup. But we've actually created some content that may be useful for people that are looking for support and help. So, for example, if you go to agencychooser.com, CHOOSER, agencychooser.com, it redirects you to a page of our site where we have built a guide that helps people navigate that process. So there are sort of 3 chapters of this guide.
The first was what I wanted. The 3 chapters, what are they? Go ahead.
The first is, how do you plan for selecting a marketing agency? The second chapter is how do you pick the right one? And the third is how do you onboard them? And we actually wrote this guide as a workbook. It's a PDF that you can either type in your answers and download it and print it, or you could, print it and handwrite in your answers. But it helps you think through what are the things we need to consider when we're thinking about hiring an agency, and steps you through that process. We use agencychooser.com just to redirect that page simply to make it easy for me to remember the URL.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, the problem there is that you haven't actually given me anything concrete to work on. I mean, the fact, what you're kind of saying to me is call us and we'll sort it out for you, which isn't the idea of the podcast. The idea of the podcast is to actually give people a way of thinking this through. I mean, I would immediately say, okay, I need to identify whether I've got a problem of capacity, a problem of means, or a problem of understanding who my audience is, and then presumably start searching online. But I've got no idea where I would start, even if I've managed to identify that starting point.
Well, so two things. Number one, this is a 42-page workbook that we wrote because you have to do that work. We can't magically tell you what you need. You have to work through to decide what it is you need, where you need. For example, you think about your marketing team. I might have a team of 5 that run marketing, and I might have an email marketing expert, and I might have a social media expert, but I don't have a web designer. And so I know that I'm going to be seeking agency support in the area of web design and development, but I don't need help with email or social. And so this was built as a workbook because you've got to go through it and do the work to understand what you need most. And I can't tell you what you need. But the other piece is the reason we exist in some ways is because if you decide you do need a web design and development agency, Google it and you'll have 50,000 options at your disposal. And the challenge is, how do you parse through that list?
Well, I mean, that is the problem. I mean, all these agencies presumably are very good at SEO. They're also putting their ad budgets into this stuff. And you're drowned at that first page with rubbish proposals by agencies that are perhaps desperate or just very good at placing themselves. And that leads, the point is, from a brand point of view, I don't know where to turn or who to choose. I mean, obviously, you're going to come back to your company, but evaluating how much value they can bring. I mean, let's say chemistry. I mean, is chemistry a good measure?
It is ultimately if all of the things are equal. So, for example, I remember back when I ran marketing and business development at an agency pitching a client, and the chief marketing officer of the company told us during the meeting that he was going to be selecting his agency that afternoon, which was pretty rare to hear. Usually it's, hey, I'm meeting with agencies this week, and then I'm going to, evaluate your proposal next week and make a selection. And I ended up running into that chief marketing officer about a year after the pitch. They didn't ultimately choose me or my agency, but what he said was, I already had my team do the research to understand that all of the agencies that met with me were capable. They all had healthcare. This is a big hospital system. They all had healthcare experience. They all had experience to do the marketing work we needed. And he said, I'm making an assumption that your average hourly bill rate is somewhat similar to the average hourly bill rate of your competitors. And he said, so what else is there to make my decision? When it comes down to it, ultimately, I'm going to pick the agency that's the best fit.
Well, in fact, you've answered my question in a bit of a roundabout way, is research the agencies you're looking at. And I mean, I'm going to come back to my favorite topic is look up their brand name, see what comes up. Are they really that good? What's on page 1? Is it their site? Is it optimized? Is it convincing? Is it accurate? Is it positive? Does it really bring you in? Then look at page 2 and see what rubbish comes up on page 2. Is there dirt hidden under the carpet? And so on and so forth. So it is research. Google's a great tool for research.
Absolutely.
So that's absolutely wonderful. The best way to figure out if an agency suits you is to research it, and a great way to research it is your brand set.
But that's part of it, right? Because
it's a great way, not the only
one. Conversation, right? You still have to have the conversation to understand. You're researching all of the ways that they are good on paper, or digital paper in this case.
Or bad. Excuse me.
Or bad.
I mean, all of that stuff under the carpet. That Google's a good way to dig that up. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you need to find out which ones are relevant for you, which ones can provide the solutions to the problems that you have, then research them. Obviously, Google is one way. There are multiple other ways to do it. And then look to see if costs meet within whatever it is you're looking for, but also the chemistry. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. And, there are directories and other guides that could help you narrow down think of them as a filter over the top of Google. One of them that I really like is called Clutch. Their website's clutch.co, and it's a large directory, global actually. And so, it may be a good place to begin, and it may spit out a list of 20, 30 agencies that all fit your filter criteria,
Mhm.
but then you still do have to do some work to get, to narrow down to the one that's the best fit for you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%. You can't trust Google to sort through it for you. You can't trust individual platforms to do it right. There might be an agency who isn't working on clutch.co to optimize that and to get loads of reviews and lots of information on there. They might be working on a different platform. So you would do well to look at another platform. I've got no idea where that might be or who that might be.
Well,
but,
sorry, one other thing, Jason, the analogy that I'll use that I think is a good analogy, and I'm not sure.
Are we going to have don't marry the first girl you date?
No. Although that's not a great idea either. Although I did know the night that I met my wife that she would become my wife someday.
Really?
I do believe in love at first sight.
You knew it in your own mind and you were convinced that it would happen. So she didn't really have a choice, or you just thought she is the person I would like to become my wife.
I thought it, but then I vocalized it. It took me at least a couple of weeks to vocalize.
Oh, I was going to say, vocalize it on the first day. That would scare.
that could be really scary if you,
yeah.
say it on the first day.
By the way, if you want to know about my second name, wait until the second date. But you're going to be my wife. And she's
right. That'd be totally creepy. No, we wouldn't do that.
Sorry, no, you weren't going to use that analogy. Tell me what you were going to tell me.
The analogy I was going to use is, the difference between a travel aggregator, a booking platform. Here in the United States, we have Travelocity and Kayak and Orbitz and Expedia. But it's the difference between using one of those and having a conversation with a travel agent that truly knows you and that's known you for 20 years and that knows the right questions to ask and knows your tendencies and your likes and your dislikes versus the travel agency. I mean, the travel aggregator site spits out a search result, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be a really good thing, but sometimes you want to have that interpersonal relationship that is curating the result set for you carefully.
Yeah, I suppose a similar situation is when somebody asks me which SEO tools I would use or which SEO tools I'd recommend for them. The fact is there are lots of platforms like SEMrush or Rank Ranger or MyPosio, which is a French one, who all do the tracking, or WooRank. And which one corresponds to which client depends on what they're trying to do and what information they're trying to visualize and in which manner. And so the approach is different. I mean, I would use Rank Ranger if I were trying to look at reputation and SERP space and rich elements alongside it. I would use SEMrush if I was trying to analyze the crawling, the quality of my site. I would use WooRank if I were trying to track pure rankings and mix in the rich elements too. I mean, there you go, that's my piece of advice. But in fact, loads of tools, and the fact that I've used them all. I use Screaming Frog for crawling. I like Screaming Frog. I think it's great. Sitebulb, is also brilliant, but I tend not to use it. But it is very good for certain case scenarios, especially for the visualization aspect. There you go, a bit of SEO advice for you. I now understand where you're coming from. Thank you very much, Joe Koufman.
Perfect.
A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Joe. And
thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you, man.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me.
Lovely. Great conversation.